Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation about really the last few weeks of your readings and um, everything, I guess. I have kind of deliberately been quiet because I know that a lot of you are dealing with editing and revising your papers. Those are going to be due at the end of the week, obviously. Those of you who can, dropping them off in hard copy is going to be really helpful because you've spent so much time on these documents that I would really like to spend a lot of time reading and making detailed notes. And it's much, much easier for me to do that when I'm holding the physical documents in my hand. Um, so, excuse me. If you can drop them off at the MFA office, that'd be great. If not, I understand. You can email them. I'll print them off. I'll do it double-sided so I'm not wasting that much paper, and I won't print off bibliographies and title pages because I don't need to do that. So that's that. I hope that all of you have found this to be kind of a challenge, quite honestly. The act of going through documents and editing them is kind of easy, but it's also kind of difficult. And it's good as a writer, especially as someone who's moving towards a thesis, to have the ability to do this and to have a handle on basically how things should read or how things could potentially read. And I'm looking forward to hearing about how the editing process went from all of you independently. There's no like massive thing. I'm just going to be emailing you probably later today, actually, while this is being loaded onto YouTube. So with that, I want to start talking to you a little bit about kind of the way that we value things outside of an art market or outside of direct commoditization. And so for that, I'm going to hone in on two examples, or probably more than that. But the first is an exhibition that the Institute for American Art did, or executed rather, at Rose Contemporary Gallery in Portland, Maine. That happened a few years ago, 2013, as you can see from this flyer. This was the advertising method for the exhibition. This as well as an email. The email says, on public view at a pace of one object a day, I'm reading this. On public view at a pace of one object a day will be a collection of items gained by the Institute for American Art through gift exchange and cultural grazing. These are things that we have chosen to keep, and importantly, that which we have chosen to display in our home. Now we wish to share some of them with you. They include a birthday present, an engagement present, a Christmas present, a beach find, a work of art, a party favor, an assignment, a criticism, a painting, a gift, an incidental piece of paper, an alley find, and a thing a relocating friend was shedding. This collection is disparate, containing objects from family and friends, sidewalks and waterways. They have been both found and given. Our hope is that by distilling your engagement, we can enhance your study of each of these things. We want to share with you the subtlety of these objects. Each one presents a nuanced look at what we like and the aesthetics that we privilege. By putting on view these objects, the Institute for American Art is seeking to venerate them, open them up for examination, and ultimately allow them the ability to get the recognition we think they deserve. Given the commercial nature of the space, Rose Contemporary, in which this is held, we want to allow these objects to enter the market, i.e. the commoditization phase. We have attached valuation to each thing that corresponds with the emotional associations which we have developed or embedded within. This number represents the lowest possible sum for which we would part with these things. We maintain the right to stop any sale should the emotionality overwhelm us. There will be a catalog of objects on view at the gallery. Please return daily to see what the objects are. And then I say kind regards. because that's how I sign everything. And so, to just review what I just read kind of painfully to you all, is we, as the Institute for American Art, which is a pseudonym for a married couple that has a museum in their house, we not only have a museum in our house, but we also have a lot of stuff in our house. And here, right behind me, you can see a work by an old roommate of mine in New York named Zuja, and a work by a former intern of mine named Jeff. Jeff is a local. Zuja lives in Amsterdam right now. So we collect a lot of things, as you probably collect a lot of things. And in the collecting of those things, they become special to you. This glass that I have my water in was a peanut butter jar. I rearranged its use value by cleaning it out, taking the label off, taking the lid off when it is fitting, and filling it with water. I can drink out of it, right? But in a different mode, this, can you see that starburst on there, or flower design? This coffee mug, handleless coffee mug, great for cold Maine nights, was a gift to me and my husband by given to us by his parents. This has very different sentimental reasons or associations. If this breaks, I'll be sad. If this breaks, I won't be sad. If I lose this, I'll be really sad. If I lose this, I'll also be really sad. But if I lose this binder, I mean, there's some things in there, but a lot of them are hard copies of things that are digitally available to me. And so I say all this stuff about collecting things because it's an exercise that everyone goes through. But for the purpose of this exhibition that the Institute for American Art put on, we wanted to invert what we do at our home, which is bring an object from an artist studio or a collection into our space, one thing at a time. We give it a lot of space, we give it a whole room, and we give it the ability to be examined, to be questioned, to be fetishized to a certain extent, to be loved, to be venerated. And in this exhibition, we wanted to take things that we had already loved and venerated ourselves and give them a public presentation. Now, I was also, as I do often, having a kind of internal conversation with the nature of galleries and gallery systems. And so by doing a project inside of a gallery space, it was important that commercial or commoditization be part of the conversation. And so objects had monetary associations, as I was saying. Now, the image that we have here is, as you can see, it's the same object 3 different times. The one on this one, I actually don't know what's going to be right or left to you. I think this is probably going to be your left, because it's my left now, so it shouldn't flip it around that much. So the one on your left is the catalog view. That's what we printed in the catalog when we put this object in the show. The center image is the single work of art installed as seen through the gallery window. This is Congress Street in downtown Portland. You're looking through one of the plate glass windows at Rose Contemporary, which is now no longer a gallery, it's a for lease building space. And then on the right hand, there's a shot of the work as installed in Rose Contemporary, but this time inside the gallery. Hang on just a second. Thanks. I had to pause to find out exactly how much we were asking for this. So, as I said, these works were all priced not with any reference to market performance. You know, the way that the price lists were developed in Veltius's text were very different than the conversations that John and I had about the variety of work that we had. Now, this work is a sailcloth with screen print design over it, and we were selling it for $3,000. Now, as far as a work of art goes, $3,000 isn't actually that much money. You know, when I was working with the artist that is currently on view at the Institute, we talked about how much time and how much of her time was spent developing the works, and how much of her money was invested in the development of the works. And then we reached a point, we reached a number, and then we kind of added to suit different costs that the project was seeing in full, not only the design of the actual objects and build of the objects, but other materials, right? I'm blabbling on about stuff that Veltes and we have had conversations about already. So, but all told, her works are around the same price point as the screen print. The screen print, if it was in a shop, would never sell for $3,000 because it's not acknowledged in the same way culturally as the work that Chiara No has on view here. There's also a lot less work involved in this piece. It's kind of a scrap screen print. The screen printing job isn't even that great. The registration is kind of horrible on it, but it has sentimental value because a friend of ours who was moving out of Portland had it, and they were hanging in their home, and when it meant a lot to us when they were leaving that we could potentially have this thing and have this continuation of a motif in a domestic home there and in a domestic home within our house. Currently, this object is not on view. Now, I forgot one thing. Hang tight. Okay, so this work, I'll make that bigger. This work, can't really see it. It's a painting that says Chris and John can have everything. Chris and John, comma, you can have everything you want. This was a gift between me and John, and it was part of this nuanced project where an artist was basically running proofs or running he was making paintings along printmaking notions. He got these rolls of canvases and made these abstract paintings, his abstract painting over them, cut them up, and then hand painted motivational posters. And so you could buy a motivational poster that was hand painted by this artist. I bought it for John as like a, we're getting married engagement gift, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And because of its sentimental value to us and what it means for us as a couple that's been together for a while, when it was put on view at Rose Contemporary, we were asking $250,000 for it. Did we have any inclination or any hope or idea that anyone was going to want to buy this stuff? No, not at all. We knew actually very concretely that there was no way that anyone was going to be interested in buying this stuff. This stuff was valuable to us. It was so valuable to us that we wanted to show it off. And by showing it in a commercial gallery, we saw this ability for us to have a conversation with monetary value and artwork, and basically question how we use the word value when it comes to artwork. When people think of an important work of art, they think of it as priceless. But there are prices that actually are associated with that. But pricelessness means something much greater than just whether or not it has a market value that's easily understood by looking at normal rubrics for getting to a price point. And that's actually not the case. And so I'm bringing this up because a lot of people and a lot of conversations that I had with you all in New York, because that was a kind of a cluster of being in the art world, conversations about value and art often default to either pricelessness, which is almost unattainable as a concept for a young artist who wants to present their work, but also that money is too present. And I'm a firm believer that these are the case. I want to actually teach you this class so that you understand that money doesn't have to be present all the time. And so in thinking about not only the work or this little conversation that the Institute for American Art had at Rose Contemporary Gallery, but also think about the way that that we find value in the things that we put around ourselves. It's kind of a circuitous way to get back at this point that I was trying to make earlier. So I'm going to skip ahead really quickly, and we're going to go to merry old England and talk about a collection there. The Sir John Soane Museum, a model of a house museum, excuse me. Sir John Soane was an architect in Britain in the 19th century, 18th, 19th century. I can't remember actually. He's like on the cusp. He might be more 18th century than 19th century, but regardless, he was an architect during this period in time when being an architect meant that you were a well-to-do member of the gentry. You were a man, and you had the ability to travel and see the world. And you might make a building, but you probably didn't make a building. Sir John Soane is one of these people. He, I think, is responsible for 2 architectural commissions in full. One of the projects that he worked on for the entirety of his life is this, which is his house museum. He, like a lot of other men in the gentry and women to a certain extent, in this time period would go on these grand tours where they would go in and around the Mediterranean, the classical world, as it were, and they would just take stuff. And you can see an arrangement of the stuff that was taken by some of these people. Their architectural embellishments, their sculptures, their this image gives us some things like urns. These they're probably not actually funerary urns. They're probably garden urns. Maybe there's like a sampling mixed in there. But then you have these little embellishments here, a bust here in bright light and whatnot. A total cluster of all of this stuff, right? He's just mashed all this stuff together and said, here's my collection. But he also actually built a custom home to suit this collection that he was amassing. And one of the things he did was he had this wonderful picture gallery. And he had so many Hogarths that he had to actually make shutter doors that would open up. And you can see here that there's paintings on this side, paintings on this closed side, and the paintings on the walls adjoining it. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, when you work from home, occasionally you have to let your dog in from the yard. So anyway, there are these shutter doors, and there's like Hogarths in this room, and then the magic of the room is that you can open them, and there's more Hogarths behind. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Hogarth, he's a really important British painter and watercolorist and illustrator and printmaker from the 18th century, and very satirical work, humorous, quippy scenes of London life. And so what Soane, I always call him Sloane, what Soane had amassed in this house of his, which is in downtown London, was a collection that was both contemporary and classical. It walked this really delicate line of being complete with venerated objects, but also of more subtle things. I mean, Hogarth was a name that people understood, but he was contemporary to Soane, so it wasn't like he was Hogarth, this monumental painter in the history of British art, yet. You know, he's alive then, so he hadn't quite amassed that fame and notoriety yet. Which is a weird thing that happens when with art history, we venerate only dead people. Art history. The art market venerates it. Lots of people. And so that's the picture room. In what we have on this on your left hand side is another room in the John Soane house where he has amassed various kinds of painting techniques, decorating the panels on his top ceiling. I'm not sure, I can't remember if it's this funny mix of him reclaiming things, like going into old places and just taking stuff, and then also him hiring people to do the work in situ. And for those of you who I hope all of you, this is cluing up, of course, our reading by Douglas Crimp on the museum's ruins, which presents one way that artists have used history to their creative ends, of course, talking about the pictures generation, but what Crimp pins down as being a development in the 1980s, I'm actually saying was not a development of the 1980s. It goes much, people have been doing this for centuries, and architects and artists like John Soane were doing it in ways that were not yet qualified as art, but definitely creative in their own purposes. Now, so you have this idea of mining the museum, mining history, but buddying it up with contemporary work to make it seem relevant, which is kind of the crux of postmodernism, right? As something is about to fall off the edge of historical obscurity, you pick it up and you pull it back and you make it full of reference again. Now, I have next to this interior shot of John Soane's museum, a painting by William Merritt Chase. And let's just do this real quick. Whenever you work with Screencast-O-Matic and Google Slides, it always rearranges things. I'm not sure why. But William Merritt Chase's 10th Street Studio from 1880. I'm pretty sure I've shown you this work prior, but it's actually great if I've shown this to you before, because it means you're familiar with the fact that Chase, like Soane, collected a variety of different materials to decorate his house to flaunt who he was as a person. This is what Soane was doing. He knew by presenting contemporary London with classical elements, he was presenting himself as this wonderful aesthete. Chase was doing the exact same thing. He's advertising himself as a painter of variety by saying, look at all these cultural items I can surround myself with. Now, is there a bit of intentionality to me sitting with works of art by people that I know around me? Yeah, of course. This is also where my desk is. For those of you who've been to the Institute, you know where I'm sitting. The Institute's right over in that room. Kind of continuing on and moving more towards the essay by Grant McCracken on Louis Rocher. I hope all of you found that text enjoyable. It's a quick little read. The Grant McCracken text is a wonderful touchstone for negotiating this distance between how money affects culture, but and how culture affects culture, because they're two systems, right? So Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein, this is the interior of their salon. You can see a variety of different artworks that they have amassed here, because they were friends with this community of artists. They were embedded within this community of artists. And so their means of presenting themselves publicly was by inviting people into their home for small conversations. This was their public extension. Come into my private home. This is the exact same structure of the relationship between Grant McCracken and Louise Rocher. Once you're inside of their home, Gertrude Stein is going to walk you through and talk about all the wonderful contemporary works that she's amassed because she's friends with these people, whereas Alice B. Toklas might more quietly introduce you to the kitchen. We all know that she was a cook, famous for her cookbook, but she would also walk you through some of the more incidental or idiosyncratic things in the house. This was the balance that these two women had in their relationship and in their domestic setting. They had this balance of contemporary and idiosyncratic. Both of them brought meaning to the collection that was their home, and both of their opinions and perspectives brought meaning and value to the works that the other might be representative of. For instance, Toklas, by surrounding these contemporary works with these idiosyncratic items, is bringing a different air of appreciation to them. They're more, these contemporary works, which could feel austere, could feel disassociated, are brought more fully into the domestic sphere, kind of brought into a place where you can appreciate them without feeling confronted by them. Like, that painting right there, it's just hanging on my wall. It's not a particularly cutthroat painting. I bought it in college from a friend of mine who was graduating with her BFA. So it's not an amazing painting for any, by any stretch of the imagination. It's decent. It's good for a student, for a BFA student, right? But when it's hanging on a white wall, it presents itself in this very direct way. It's the only thing that is speaking and is speaking directly to you. When it's here in conversation with other objects, the balance is shifted. The stress is taken off the work is allowed to engage more fully with a network of valuation and a network of meaning. Some of the meaning is going to be passed on to it. You know, these two paintings, they're going to have a conversation, right? This painting is going to bring content to this painting, and vice versa, if only by their proximity. Now, a lot of artists want to fight this and say that, no, that one work has agency and this work has agency and they're autonomous. Well, yeah, cool. But no man is an island, right? So your work is going to be situated next to someone else's. It's going to be situated next to something that's just around you or around it. And you don't have control over that. And that's the beauty of it. You know, Fred Wilson talks about when his work moves into the private collection that he loses, I think I might have brought this up last time actually, that he loses a certain air of control. He gives it away. The work has its own leg, like children, and leaves home to go and establish their own existence somewhere else. These two paintings left their studio home and have found conversation and agency in their unison. And then, of course, we have this kind of weird thing of dried plants here that is off-cast material from where my husband works as a florist. By being in proximity between these two things, there's a conversation between what is decorative and what is not decorative. What is kind of more unified along a single idea, you know, dried out biomorphic things, and another thing that's unified by an idea. Oil, pigment, binder, time, artwork. So these things, in their arrangement, the word that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about curatorial practice is sing. They sing a little bit. They vibrate with a certain personhood. When it's weird to talk about objects with personhood. For a lot of political reasons, but they communicate. They present themselves as earnest things in the world. And Cole, I know that you're very in depth in your research of these conversations about what meaning and material, how meaning and material coexist. So you know, this isn't just for you, but it's for everybody. But you, and so. I'm going to hop to another slide and continue this conversation. Oop, going back. I thought I had another slide. I don't. So, kind of continuing, or kind of to recap, and I'll move on from Grant McCracken, is this notion of curatorial value. And curatorial value can be seen in this pairing here. It can be seen in something like the triennial. You know, think of the way that the curators, in their arrangement of the works, were valuing the works differently. Like the Disc magazine shower bed is a very public presentation to everyone who walks in. I mean, I didn't see the triennial, but I walked in and I saw that work before, using the bathroom and leaving. And so, like, how does that valuation work out? What is that system there? What are they privileging in this work, and what kind of conversations do they want to tease out of this work? Now, Grant McCracken and Louise Roget, their conversation, or McCracken's take on Roget's collection, is that it says everything about who this person is as a person. And what I'm saying slightly differently, specifically about Toklas and Stein here, or even Sohn and Chase, is that they're much more in control of it. Instead of the objects having a little bit of dominance over Roget, the people that I'm speaking to today have agency over the objects, and they use the objects and the value that's embedded in them to present something about themselves. And so I want to move on real quick. Now, in thinking about curatorial value, I want to end with a conversation that does deal a lot with both personal identity and identity and agency of the work. And that has to do with the exhibition called, excuse me again, sorry, the font keeps messing up because of Screencast-O-Matic. Whatever, it's free, right? It's not free, actually. So, in 1915, in Petrograd, a group of artists that were operating at that point, either they were referring to themselves as suprematists or constructivists or Bolsheviks or a bunch of other terms, they came together and put together an exhibition that was referred to as the last futurist exhibition of paintings 0.10. Largely, this exhibition is referred to as the 0 to 10 exhibition. I'm not really sure where that name comes from exactly. There's a few different opinions out there, or a few different histories, and I just call it 0 to 10. So, in this exhibition, Kazimir Malevich knew that he wanted to present an end of painting. Excuse me. He knew he wanted everyone who walked in the gallery to see his work and to get this guttural punch, not even guttural, just a punch in the gut of, wow, this guy is really making almost sacrilegious conversations right now in these paintings. And he, in wanting this to be embedded in the presentation of the work, he realized that there's one place that is known to all Orthodox Christians that live within his community. There's one place in the home that the installation of a painting is seen as holy, or is seen as devotional. That place is in this corner right here. That corner space in most Orthodox homes is reserved for the placement of an icon. My icon is hanging up over there. Orthodox Christian family. So it's not in the upper corner. Whoops. I'm not devout. So, but if you were in Petrograd in 1915 and you were devout, you would have in this top corner the icon of your saint. Most homes were pretty, I mean, it's 1915, there's not a lot of money floating around, and so people didn't have a lot of things. And if they had a painting, it would be an icon, and if they had an icon, it would be hanging in this location. And so this was a very important thing for people within this community. This was a continuum that they saw themselves being on. We are all part of this cultural tradition. We are all presenting this cultural tradition in the same way. Kazimir Malevich, growing up in this tradition, thought to himself, okay, I have this thesis of tearing down the history of painting. I think the way that I can do it is by presenting a painting that is void of painting. It's void of pictorial depth, it's void of narrative, it's void of allegorical symbolism, it's void of iconography, it's void of everything. It is a black square on a white ground. If I put this void, this black hole, where every Christian in this community puts their icon, every Christian that walks through the door is going to look to that black void, not see their icon, and immediately consider that there is something amiss, that there is something new going on in this gallery space. There's a new kind of cultural identity that's being forged here, and it is one that does not privilege necessarily the iconographic tools of Christian liturgy. It's privileging instead a more critical voice, or a more critical perspective. It's privileging a bit of a fight. And in the presentation of this work, that's exactly what happened. Malevich got his fight. People saw this work as blasphemous. People saw this work as silly or stupid. They derided it. And ultimately, it has done wonderful things for this work of art. It's become instrumental in the history of art and history of painting. And it has also been a really great conversation piece for talking about avant-garde practices. Oops. Now, at the same time, at the same exhibition, Vladimir Tatlin, another artist, more associated with constructivism than suprematism, because suprematism was kind of Malevich's thing, and after this exhibition, Tatlin and Malevich didn't really get along. So here's what happened. Tatlin had for many weeks, I think, maybe a year, but I doubt it, but for a few weeks, Tatlin had considered this discourse about the corner of the room, the religiosity of the corner of the room. And he thought to himself, I'm a sculptor. I think that I can challenge both sculptural norms, which is everything exists in the center of the room in high relief, or it exists in low relief and is hanging flat on the wall. Those are the two options. And he's thinking to himself, well, a corner isn't really low relief because it's so far off the wall and it's between two walls that it's not tethered entirely to the wall that it's mounted on. But it's also not high relief because it doesn't sit directly in the space. You can't pass around it in 3 dimensions. It's this hybrid of both. But it's also this thing that is going to signify a certain air of religious sacrilege. And so he develops this work, corner counter relief, and goes to install it at the 0 to 10 show, walks in, sees that Malevich has installed his work in this corner position, is real pissed at him, installs this work in another space, and leaves angry. These two artists came together and identified that there was a cultural tradition within their community that they could utilize as a means of having a specific conversation. There was a core value to the community that they were both in that had a physical manifestation in one specific trajectory, which is this corner, right? We're going to hang our icons here. So they wanted to have this fight, and they had it because they knew exactly what the cultural values were for within their community. Now, for Patrick Geary, his Sacred Commodities, the Circulation of Medieval Relics, which I understand is kind of a long read, but I think it's a really great one. There's a lot of conversations in there about cultural standards. You know, I think it's fun to track these things, but to follow how the arc of how the history is told, right? That's one way of reading it, exactly how Geary puts it. But there's the subtextual read, which is much more about the cultural traditions that all of these things signify. The way that commodities are exchanged, the way that that relics are developed, what markets for relics look like. All of that can go back to the simple question of why. Why are they shaped like that? Why do they look like that? Why are those players interacting in that specific way? And there's a real interesting conversation between what the cultural tendencies are for that market and its relationship to the market that we all investigated in New York City. There are players that ascribe to a very specific value system or a rule book, and that sets the bar for a lot of the business practices in a highly unregulated market. You know, it was either between, like, if it wasn't stolen or pillaged. I mean, those are kind of the same thing, except if it's pillaged, the people that you're stealing from are already dead or gone, so it's not real. It's ransacking. Stealing, they're like asleep in the other room. Horrifying. But it's an unregulated market. A lot of people talk about the art world as being unregulated, but they don't understand that it's heavily regulated, but it's emotionally regulated. And so going back to the exhibition that the Institute put on at Rose Contemporary Gallery, we saw and understood the fabric of the way value systems operate in the art world. That was a cultural standard, and we decided to co-opt part of that for the presentation of a specific kind of conversation. That's what Vladimir Totlin was interested in doing. I am in no way saying that the work that I did is similar to this or part of this, or like this is a different kind of historical thing. So that's that. So I don't want to take too much more of your time because I know you're probably making some finishing touches on things, but the text that is in this book by Anestis and Gabri, called Untitled, deals with the neoliberal structural components that are shaping a lot of contemporary art, which I think is a really interesting conversation, which we'll have more in earnest over the course of the summer. But I don't want to, again, it's kind of a divergent topic from this particular conversation. And by this week, I'd be really interested in hearing some of your thoughts about Kopitov's article. The commoditization as a process is a really, really interesting read. If you haven't gotten a chance to go through it yet, he starts off talking about the commoditization of people, which is a really effective way to get you and your attention into this conversation, which can be kind of dull and anthropological, I understand, but when you think about what kind of epistemic violences we addressed in our course last semester and relate it to the epistemic violences that capitalism enacts across our culture, because that is our episteme, it's an incredibly interesting and poignant read. So have a read through that, and then I know the 24th, our last week of conversations, I'm not really going to be putting up much, but the market of symbolic goods is just, I think, a really good, nice roundup for these ideas. It's my conclusion, as it were. So I look forward to reading these documents. My red pen is ready, not to scare you, but it's a conversation piece. My red pen is my conversation piece. And on that note, take care. I hope you're all doing wonderful things in your studio, and I look forward to hearing about them all and having a lot of these conversations in person, one-to-one, this summer during the intensive. Yeah. See ya.